The cadaver dog abruptly halted at the foot of the ravine, unwilling to proceed. "Storm, what is it?" Officer Klaus Kinski inquired, but the dog remained stationary. Shortly thereafter, they arrived at a clearing, and Storm's discovery left every individual stunned. A ranger's deceased body chained to a tree, the victim of murder, but that wasn't the most unsettling aspect. It was Storm's subsequent action that defied explanation. So what transpired in that forest? Please subscribe and leave a comment indicating your viewing location. Let's begin. The fluorescent lights of the county sheriff's department hummed quietly as Officer Klaus Kinski packed his gear at 5:15 a.m. The early morning silence was punctuated only by the steady breathing of Storm, his German Shepherd partner, who sat at perfect attention nearby, his dark, intelligent eyes fixed on his handler's movements. "Ready for another day, buddy?" Klaus asked, gently scratching behind Storm's ears. The dog's tail thumped against the floor once, a quiet expression of his enthusiasm. Unlike other K9s who might bark or prance, Storm had always been remarkably composed, almost dignified in his responses. At 5 years old, the German Shepherd had already earned near legendary status within the department. His ability to detect remains was remarkable, often locating them in cases where other dogs and advanced technology had been unsuccessful. 3 months prior, he had found the body of a missing hiker beneath a landslide that had significantly altered the terrain. Just 2 weeks earlier, he had followed the scent of human remains through a flash-flooded canyon, guiding recovery teams to a body that would have otherwise been lost to the sea. A strong bond formed between Klaus and Storm when they were partnered 18 months ago, yet Klaus occasionally sensed a certain enigmatic quality in his partner, levels of intelligence and awareness surpassing even the most expertly trained police dogs he'd worked with before. Klaus's phone vibrated with a message from Sheriff Dawson. "My office now, possible missing person." "Let's go, Storm," Klaus instructed gently, attaching the lead to Storm's working harness. The dog moved with a smooth, controlled grace alongside him through the station's hushed hallways. Sheriff Dawson glanced up from his desk as they entered, his face etched with concern. Forest ranger missing. Jacob Ramsey, 42, a seasoned outdoorsman, failed to report in after his patrol 3 days ago. His truck was discovered left at the Thunder Ridge trailhead. "Any leads?" Klaus inquired, taking the file folder that Dawson offered. "Nothing definite," Dawson replied. "Rangers have conducted initial searches, but the area is extensive. They required Storm," Klaus acknowledged, reviewing Ramsey's file. A respected conservationist with 15 years of experience with the Forest Service, specializing in wildlife protection. Dawson added a further detail. Ramsey had experienced conflicts with poachers in the north section and had submitted reports concerning several individuals, including Tony Tips. He was a dangerous person with a criminal record. Klaus observed Storm, who appeared calm, but seemed subtly more vigilant upon hearing about the missing ranger. A peculiar coincidence occurred when Storm was assigned to Klaus approximately 18 months prior, via a contact within the Forest Service. The transfer documentation was ambiguous, stating only that Storm's previous handler had, with some hesitation, released him to the K-9 program due to his remarkable abilities being unsuitable for a personal companion role. Forest Service headquarters experienced a period of heightened activity when Klaus arrived 30 minutes subsequently. Storm emerged from the truck, instantly using his nose to assess the mountain air. Rangers gathered around maps displayed on a folding table sheltered by a canopy, their expressions etched with concern. After 3 days of absence, they were now searching for either a fortunate survivor or a deceased individual. Officer Kinski, a tall woman dressed in a ranger uniform, stepped forward. "I'm Chief Ranger Marissa Ling. Thank you for attending," she said. Klaus responded. "What was the most recent verified sighting of Ranger Ramsey?" On Tuesday morning, while beginning a routine patrol of the Thunder Basin area, Ling responded, indicating a northeastern portion of the map. His focus was on investigating reports of illegal trapping. They located his truck at this position, although the trails diverged in 5 directions. Storm remained focused as Klaus presented Ramsey's uniform shirt for him to analyze, his nostrils widening as he registered the missing ranger's scent. Klaus was struck by Storm's immediate intensity, not only in his professional focus, but also by a deeper, almost personal determination. He seems particularly driven today, Ling noted. Dark clouds gathered against the mountain peaks as two ranger guides led Klaus and Storm to the trailhead where Ramsey's truck had been found. Recent rainstorms had turned sections of the trail to mud, potentially washing away scents and evidence. Klaus released Storm's tracking lead, instructing him to search. Find him, Storm. The German Shepherd commenced his systematic grid pattern, utilizing his sense of smell. 20 minutes elapsed during the search when Storm abruptly raised his head, analyzing the air, then turned sharply eastward, departing from the designated search area. He possessed something, Klaus called to the rangers, hurrying to keep pace as Storm pulled them deeper into a dense section of forest, down a seldom-traveled ravine where sunlight barely penetrated the canopy. The forest grew denser as they descended, centuries-old trees forming a cathedral-like canopy that muted even the birds' calls. Storm moved with increasing urgency, his methodical search pattern transforming into determined pursuit. Klaus struggled to keep pace, observing that the terrain grew steeper and more treacherous, a route no one would choose willingly. He's tracking like he's on a mission, one of the rangers commented, breathing heavily while navigating down a particularly steep section. I've worked with search dogs before but have never seen this level of focus. Klaus nodded, keeping his eyes on Storm's tail as it disappeared around a massive fallen tree. He usually works in a precise grid pattern. This was different. He seemed to know precisely his destination. The temperature decreased significantly as they went further down into the ravine, the air thick with the smell of moist soil and rotting plants. Storm stopped sometimes at intersections, sniffing the air before proceeding with resolute confidence. Suddenly, Storm's behavior altered considerably. The shepherd stopped, his hair standing on end, a quiet moan rising from his throat. Over 5 years of partnership, Klaus had never witnessed such a reaction from his typically composed partner. Storm? Klaus approached with caution, worried by this unusual behavior. The dog trembled slightly, then advanced more slowly, guiding them toward a small clearing. When they pushed through the undergrowth, Klaus saw it, a massive oak tree standing alone in the center of the space, and chained to its trunk, the unmistakable form of a human body. We've got a body, Klaus radioed, his heart sinking as he neared, locating the scene approximately half a mile east of Search Grid C. The victim, wearing Forest Service khakis, was slumped against the tree trunk, arms pulled behind and secured with chains wrapped multiple times around the tree. Multiple stab wounds marked the chest and abdomen. Blood had collected and dried in the dirt below. Death had not been swift or painless. What followed shocked those present. Despite usually exhibiting impeccable composure at death scenes, Storm deviated from established procedure. The shepherd approached the body, whimpering a sound Klaus had never heard from him before, and began gently nuzzling the ranger's limp hand. "Storm, back!" Klaus commanded, shocked by this breach of training. For the first time in their partnership, Storm disregarded a direct order. He stayed near the body, his demeanor shifting from that of a trained canine to something different, deeply saddened, appearing almost human in his distress. As the recovery team began to move the body, Klaus observed his partner with increasing worry, a thought taking shape. Storm wasn't exhibiting the behavior of a cadaver dog that had successfully found a target. He was acting as if he's discovered a companion. A technician carefully examined the victim's pockets, recovering a wallet. Jacob Ramsey of the Forest Service confirmed his identity, displaying his ID card. The photograph depicted a man in his early 40s, possessing gentle eyes, a tanned and weathered face, and a well-kept beard. When Klaus saw the photo clearly, his heart skipped a beat. A wave of recognition struck him with considerable force. "Can't be," he murmured, looking from the ID photo to Storm. Klaus then knelt beside Storm, presenting the ID card so the dog could see it. Storm responded instantly, a quiet whine escaping him. His nose softly touched the photo protected by plastic. Storm had been transferred to our K-9 unit from a contact within the Forest Service, who was no longer able to keep him despite their connection. Klaus provided the explanation, and everything clicked. The documentation stated his previous handler relinquished him because his detection skills were too remarkable to be used for personal companionship. He needed to be deployed in service. A realization spread among those present. Klaus confirmed that Ramsey was Storm's original handler, and the dog's unusual behavior now seemed understandable. He relinquished Ramsey so Storm could work with the sheriff's department. Standing alone with Storm beside Ramsey's body, Klaus whispered, "I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry." The shepherd leaned against him, seeking comfort in a way he never had before. "We'll find who did this," Klaus promised, both to Storm and to the man who had loved him enough to let him go. "I swear it." While the medical examiner made arrangements to transport Ramsey's body, Klaus allowed Storm the necessary space and time. The shepherd continued his mournful vigil, sometimes touching the ranger's hand. The experienced officers and medical staff worked silently, moved by the dog's clear sorrow. Suddenly, Storm's head jerked up, his nose working rapidly. His distressed appearance disappeared, giving way to the concentrated focus Klaus knew from their tracking assignments. The change was sudden, so thorough that those nearby observed it. "What's happening?" one of the rangers asked. "He's found something," Klaus responded, observing as Storm circled the tree where Ramsey had been chained. "He's scenting." Unexpectedly, Storm fixated on a scent trail and sped toward the northern edge of the clearing, almost wrenching the lead from Klaus's grip. "He's tracking someone," Klaus exclaimed, exerting himself to keep up as Storm raced through the underbrush. Could this be our killer's trail? They advanced further into the forest, Storm assisting them up a steep incline, through a thick area of mountain laurel, and across a small stream. Despite the difficult ground and the time passed since the murder, Storm showed no hesitation, never losing the scent. The trail led them to a small valley where a creek ran through the landscape. The dog's pace finally lessened as they neared a small clearing positioned against a rock face. Evidence of recent human presence was immediately visible. A makeshift campsite with a fire's remains, discarded food wrappers, and trampled grass indicating where someone had slept. Storm examined the campsite carefully, then paused, becoming very still and alert. He remained motionless near the fire pit's remains, observing an area where several larger stones created a rough circle around the ashes. "He has something," Klaus said softly, approaching cautiously to prevent damage to any potential evidence. Storm remained motionless, signaling that he had discovered something important. Klaus approached the fire pit and carefully inspected the area Storm had indicated. Initially, he observed nothing out of the ordinary, simply stones, ash, and dirt. However, upon closer inspection of the stone arrangement, he detected a subtle discoloration in the soil near a notably large rock. Concealed beneath it, and partially embedded in the loose earth, was a hunting knife featuring a unique carved handle. Even in the muted forest light, dark stains were visible on the blade. "He found the murder weapon," Klaus said with quiet amazement. Looking at Storm with newfound respect, through rain and days of weather, he tracked the killer's trail and led us right to the key evidence. Storm remained in his alert position, not moving a muscle even as additional officers began arriving at the scene. His composure was remarkable, particularly given the emotional weight of the search. Although he clearly had ties to Ramsey, and despite experiencing prior sorrow, he had consistently adhered to strict evidence preservation protocols. "I've never encountered anything comparable," confessed Hartman, as the forensics team meticulously excavated and processed the knife. "Typically, human suspects falter under emotional strain. Your dog transformed it into focus for the investigation." Klaus nodded, observing as the knife was carefully placed in an evidence bag. The technician's initial assessment corroborated the apparent evidence. Blood was present in the handle's grooves and on the blade, aligning with the injuries sustained by Ramsey. "We need to send this to the lab for DNA verification," the lead technician stated. "I'd wager my pension this is your murder weapon." Hartman inquired, "Any fingerprints?" "Possible partial prints on the handle," the technician responded. "If we're fortunate, whoever committed this act was inattentive." Returning to the sheriff's department, a sense of intense concentration permeated the atmosphere as forensics examined the evidence Storm had located. Klaus remained at his desk, studying Ramsey's case file, While Storm rested at his feet, the shepherd's gaze seldom leaving his handler's face. Despite still exhibiting signs of the day's occurrences, Storm had transitioned to a watchful composure, seemingly anticipating the next step in their assignment. Klaus's phone sounded, Detective Hartman calling from the lab. The print analysis came back positive. Tony Tips, with a history of poaching convictions, assault charges, and criminal trespass, is identified. He's been a person of interest for Ramsey for several months. Tips, Klaus stated, reviewing the documentation to locate the name. Ramsey had previously submitted 3 reports concerning Tips within the last year, each documenting illegal trapping within protected areas. That establishes our probable cause, Hartman affirmed. Revenge. Additionally, forensic testing confirmed the blood found on the knife is consistent with Ramsey's blood type. We possess sufficient evidence to obtain an arrest warrant. Surveillance images of Tony Tips depicted a man in his mid-30s, characterized by a shaggy beard, intense eyes, and a weathered complexion indicative of a difficult life. Security footage indicated his truck was traveling towards Thunder Basin on the morning Ramsey disappeared, and then departing that night. This timeline aligned precisely with the murder. As twilight cast the mountains in amber light, the tactical team established positions around Tips's secluded cabin. Klaus and Storm waited concealed behind a group of pine trees. 50 yards from the back door, the shepherd's body language displayed controlled tension, remaining perfectly still except for his eyes following the movements of the officers surrounding the property. The SWAT team moved with practiced efficiency, converging on the cabin from multiple angles. Sheriff's Department, search warrant, echoed across the clearing as they breached the front door. Almost immediately, a crash sounded from the rear of the cabin, followed by a shout over the radio. A suspect was fleeing out the back window, east side. Prior to the commander being able to issue new orders, a figure burst through the back door. Tony Tips, holding a backpack, and running directly toward the dense forest behind his property. Klaus made a split-second decision, unclipping Storm's lead and giving the command they trained for countless times. Storm, apprehend. The shepherd launched forward like a missile, covering the ground between them and the fleeing suspect with breathtaking speed. Tips heard the approaching dog and glanced back, his face showing terror as he saw 80 pounds of focused German shepherd closing the distance. Stop! Police! Klaus shouted, running behind Storm with his weapon drawn. Tips ignored the command, increasing his efforts to reach the tree line, but he was unable to escape. Storm closed the final distance with a powerful leap, striking Tips between the shoulder blades and sending him crashing face first into the dirt. Tony Tips, you're under arrest for the murder of Forest Ranger Jacob Ramsey, Klaus announced formally, reciting the Miranda rights as Tips was helped to his feet. I didn't kill nobody, Tips retorted, though his eyes moved around anxiously. Don't know what you're talking about. However, his demeanor shifted when he saw Storm, a brief moment of recognition followed by evident apprehension. That's Ramsey's dog, he mumbled almost to himself. What the hell? The interrogation room at the sheriff's department was intentionally plain. It featured bare walls, a metal table fixed to the floor, and uncomfortable chairs. Tips sat hunched on one side, his hands cuffed, as Detective Hartman presented the evidence against him. Klaus cautiously guided Storm to the department's dedicated K-9 area, a protected room with soft bedding, water, and recognizable toys. Stay, Storm, I will return shortly, he said, engaging the door's safety latch. During the observation, Klaus witnessed Hartman's confrontation with Tips. Hartman presented the evidence. The knife discovered at the campsite bearing Tips' fingerprints and blood matching Ramsey's type, alongside camera footage of his truck near the scene. It wasn't supposed to go like that, Tips eventually confessed, leaning forward. I just wanted to scare him, teach him a lesson about messing with my traps. While Tips recounted the altercation, describing how he'd surprised Ramsey on the trail and how the situation escalated, a disturbance arose from within the building. A K-9 unit was reported loose over the radio, having escaped from the secure area. Storm appeared around the corner, moving purposefully and disregarding the officers trying to contain him. In a departure from their usual dynamic, Storm bypassed Klaus entirely, his attention solely fixed on the interrogation room door. The shepherd slammed against the door, managing to force it open despite its solid build. Tips and Hartman looked up, startled, as 80 pounds of intense energy flooded the room. The subsequent events appeared to play out in slow motion. Storm swiftly moved across the area with alarming accuracy, overturning the table completely, his objective clear. Tips scarcely had time to lift his hands before the shepherd connected with his face, sending both of them tumbling to the floor. "Get him off! Get him off!" Tips yelled as Storm's jaws latched onto his cheek and forehead, the attack appearing targeted and deliberate. Klaus and Hartman both reacted instantly, seizing Storm and attempting to pull him away. "Storm, release! Release now!" Klaus ordered, using all the authority in his voice. For several tense seconds, Storm held on, then finally obeyed Klaus's repeated commands, loosening his grip and stepping back, his muzzle smeared with blood. "He tried to attack me." Screams echoed through the pain. "That dog, Storm, tried to attack me." Storm was immediately placed in mandatory isolation while Tips received medical treatment for his injuries. The reality of their situation was serious. Police K9s who attacked without command faced a standardized response, often euthanasia, regardless of circumstances. "Tips is getting 20 stitches, Sheriff Dawson informed Klaus grimly. "He's already threatening legal action, demanding Storm be put down immediately." "He broke the case," Klaus stated, desperation evident in his voice. "Found the body, tracked the evidence, located the murder weapon, and then attacked a handcuffed suspect in custody." Dawson concluded firmly. "The evidence collection is now potentially compromised." By 9 a.m. the following morning, the department's conference room had been converted into a makeshift hearing chamber. A long table at the front seated Chief Jenkins from County, Sheriff Dawson, and the department's legal counsel. Various officers, Forest Service personnel, and administrative staff were seated in rows to observe the proceedings. Storm was brought in by a neutral handler, adhering to department protocol for K9s under review, and secured to a fixed point at the room's side. Despite the circumstances, he remained perfectly composed, exhibiting a professional demeanor, a sharp contrast to yesterday's violence. As Klaus entered, Storm's focus instantly shifted to him, yet he held the precise stance he had been instructed to maintain. "This disciplinary hearing is now in session," Chief Jenkins declared, his voice reflecting 30 years of experience in law enforcement. "We are here to examine the incident involving K9 Officer Storm and decide on suitable measures in line with department procedures." Klaus had spent a sleepless night preparing his statement, collecting Storm service records, and contacting K9 training specialists who could potentially assist their case. He had known Storm for only 18 months of the dog's 5-year career, but during that time, they had become inseparable partners whose combined skills had resolved dozens of cases. Detective Hartman detailed the events in the interrogation room, and then the department veterinarian reported having examined Storm and finding no physical distress or illness that could account for the behavior. While other officers testified to Storm's excellent history, a department officer entered and presented Sheriff Dawson with a document. "Chief Jenkins," Dawson announced, "we've just received pertinent information. Tony Tips has provided a full confession regarding the murder of Jacob Ramsey." This morning, Dawson informed the surprised board that Tips requested to speak with detectives without his attorney. He relinquished his rights and provided a detailed confession, including evidence of premeditation. Tips stated that seeing Storm prompted his confession. Jenkins, reviewing the statement, commented that dog knew. "Somehow it knew exactly what I did to Ramsey." Following almost an hour of testimonies, which included an unexpected video statement from Storm's original trainer, the board adjourned to deliberate. 20 minutes passed before they reconvened with their decision. After examining the evidence and the circumstances, Jenkins stated, "This board has decided that although K9 Officer Storm's actions broke procedure, the unique qualities of this case require leniency. Storm will be placed on probationary status for 3 months, during which he will undergo intensive retraining. Officer Kinski will also complete advanced handler certification focused on emotional management in working K9s." Relief flooded through Klaus as the verdict was announced. Following the probationary period, Storm would be reevaluated for return to full duty. The board acknowledged both the severity of the protocol violation and the extraordinary circumstances surrounding it. Jenkins stated that the decision recognized the seriousness of the protocol violation and the unusual circumstances involved. The board also acknowledged Storm's outstanding service record and the specific situation arising from his relationship with the victim. As the crowd started to leave, Ranger Chief Ling spoke to Klaus. "Jacob would be proud," she said softly. He relinquished Storm because he was convinced the dog's capabilities could save lives and deliver justice to victims. Today confirmed his belief. "I wish I'd known him," Klaus said, observing the neutral handler readying Storm for his return. Storm embodies his training and his impact in all that he does. Link expressed sadness as Jacob transferred Storm to the K9 program. He described it as relinquishing a part of himself, yet acknowledged that certain partnerships hold such significance they must be shared for a wider benefit. As the hearing ended, Klaus detached Storm from the anchor, allowing him to stand openly beside him again. The shepherd's demeanor remained impeccable, but a nuance in his stance hinted at comprehension, possibly even contentment, with the result. "Ready to return, partner?" Klaus inquired gently. Storm raised his gaze, his knowing eyes conveying a message deeper than simple words, more than just loyalty or relief, but a profound connection forged by their shared experience. Justice had been achieved for both Jacob Ramsey and Storm. Tony Tips had confessed and would face the consequences of his actions. Klaus, meanwhile, had gained a deeper appreciation for the remarkable bond between handlers and their K9 partners, a connection that sometimes transcended human understanding, bridging not just species, but time and loss as well. Have you ever witnessed an animal demonstrate extraordinary loyalty to someone from their past? The enduring relationship between Storm and his previous handler serves as a powerful illustration of how animal bonds can persist despite separation, revealing an emotional complexity often undervalued. Do you believe your pet possesses the capacity to assess character, even if their responses appear dramatic? Considering the circumstances, would a disciplinary committee have offered Storm another opportunity following his attack on the murderer? The distinction between instinct and justice can be unclear when we examine the impressive capabilities of these highly trained K9 officers. If Storm's story resonated with you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary K9 tales. Tap the notification bell to ensure you don't miss our new uploads. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate the remarkable bond between handlers and their K9 partners. Don't miss our other K9 tarot stories currently displaying. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video. During a standard prisoner transport, K9, Courage unexpectedly broke formation, rushing directly toward the van and preventing it from moving. His handler attempted various methods to regain control, but the dog remained steadfast. The situation was baffling, until the doors were opened and the prisoners were counted. What discovery prompted widespread alarm among the entire team? First, click that subscribe button and leave a comment below, letting us know where in the world you're watching from. Now let's proceed. The morning mist covered the asphalt of the county jail parking lot as officers got ready for what was planned to be a standard prisoner transport. The orange light of dawn had just started to appear over the horizon as Officer Matthews adjusted the specialized K9 vest on his partner, Courage, a 2-year-old German shepherd with intelligent amber eyes that missed nothing. "First big transport, boy," Matthews whispered, checking the vest straps one final time. Matthews, a K9 handler for just 3 months, was the newest member of the department's elite unit and striving to demonstrate his capabilities. A sheen of sweat coated his hands as he reviewed the mental checklist his father had instilled in him since childhood. Being the son of the region's most renowned K9 trainer offered certain benefits, yet it also brought with it exceedingly high expectations. The pain of his father's funeral remained acutely present. Just 4 months prior, cancer had claimed the man who had devoted 30 years to establishing the department's K9 program from its inception. The responsibility of upholding that legacy felt heavy on Matthews' shoulders each morning as he donned the uniform. "Officer Matthews," Lieutenant Davidson's clear voice broke through his thoughts. "Transport briefing, now." Lieutenant Davidson was a 20-year veteran known for managing operations with military precision. His square jaw and perpetually furrowed brow suggested a man who hadn't smiled in decades. The lieutenant openly expressed his doubts regarding Matthews' quick assignment to the K-9 unit, a position many suspected he obtained through his father's connections, not through merit. The transport today involves 8 high-risk inmates, Davidson announced to the assembled team, his voice carrying across the parking lot. 3 violent offenders, 2 former gang leaders, and 3 flight risks. Zero margin for error, people. The lieutenant's eyes lingered on Matthews and Courage. This is not a training exercise, Officer Matthews. Keep that animal under control at all times. Matthews nodded stiffly. Yes, sir. The transport convoy comprised 3 vehicles. A lead patrol car with Lieutenant Davidson and his partner, an armored transport van holding the 8 prisoners secured in individual restraints, and a trailing vehicle with Matthews and Courage, responsible for providing supplementary security and a response capability if required. Convoy formation is standard, Davidson stated. No stops, no exceptions. Radio check every 15 minutes. Questions? His gaze surveyed the gathered officers, challenging anyone to speak. Load up. The substantial doors of the transport van closed definitively as the last prisoner was secured within. As Matthews instilled resolve into the back seat of their patrol SUV, he felt the customary feeling of worry constricting in his chest. His father's voice resonated in his memory. The riskiest moment is the one where you believe nothing can go wrong. Engines started in sequence. The lead car advanced, trailed by the transport van, its reinforced exterior appearing dully in the early morning light. Matthews inhaled deeply, shifted the vehicle into drive, and followed, finalizing the convoy as it proceeded through the secured gates and onto the road destined for the state penitentiary, 60 miles north. The convoy progressed steadily from the urban sprawl toward the rural highway that would carry them north. The morning traffic flowed easily, the road still wet from the previous night's rain. Matthews established a steady pace for the drive, keeping exactly 3 car lengths separating his vehicle from the transport van in front. Radio check, all units. Lieutenant Davidson's voice transmitted over the radio at the 15-minute point. Transport secure. All prisoners accounted for, the van team responded. Tail position secured, Matthews confirmed, observing Courage, who remained alert but relaxed within his custom-built rear compartment. The standard check was finished. Matthews released his breath. The highway extended ahead, deserted except for the infrequent long-haul truck. They had crossed the county line and were now on the most remote section of the trip, 20 miles of only farmland and forest. 17 minutes into the drive, everything altered. Courage's behavior shifted abruptly. His ears perked up, his body becoming rigid as if jolted by an electric shock. Matthews observed this change in his rearview mirror immediately prior to the initial bark. The sound was sharp and urgent, unlike the dog's usual alert. Courage. Quiet, Matthews instructed, a note of confusion entering his voice. There were no vehicles nearby, and no apparent dangers visible. The dog disregarded him entirely, a behavior he had never witnessed during operations. The barking grew louder, with bravery now evident within his compartment. As he moved towards the front of their vehicle, his gaze fixed on the transport van ahead. The radio transmitted a burst of static. Tail position. What's happening back there? Lieutenant Davidson asked, his annoyance clear. Sir, my K-9 is indicating something. I'm trying to assess. Control your animal, Officer Matthews, Davidson interrupted. That noise is unprofessional and disruptive. Yes, sir. Working on it. A flush crept up Matthews' cheeks. His courage seemed to ebb. His voice dropped to a quiet tone. The dog reacted by barking with increased urgency, pressing his weight against the compartment's barrier, still fixated on the transport van. Matthews, I swear to God if you can't silence that mutt. Davidson's warning was unmistakable. From the transport van radio, Matthews could hear the prisoners starting to respond to the disturbance, their voices growing louder. What's with the dog? One of the guards inquired. Davidson retorted sharply, Officer Matthews can't control his pet. Maintain course and speed. Matthews felt sweat form on his forehead as he considered his choices. All training guidelines emphasized maintaining convoy integrity. Halting now, in this exposed location, simply due to a canine's inexplicable actions, would disregard every procedure outlined in the manual. Perhaps he needs a bathroom break, another officer suggested via radio with a chuckle. Or he saw a squirrel, someone else added. Matthews sensed the scrutiny from his colleagues, picturing their dismissive gestures. Matthews's barks now carried a frantic edge he hadn't encountered previously, not during training, not during building searches, and not even during the single live pursuit they experienced last month. His father's words echoed in his thoughts, spoken from a hospital bed just days before his passing. A dog doesn't need to understand the danger to know it's there. When your partner shares a concern, you listen. Even when others question your judgment. Courage was now rapidly dividing his focus between Matthews and the van, as if pleading with his human partner to comprehend. The dog's actions weren't due to random energy or inadequate training. This was something different altogether. Last warning, Matthews, Davidson's voice was cold as ice. Control. Your dog. Despite the increasing stress, Matthews couldn't dismiss the certainty developing in his gut. A change in Courage's demeanor was apparent. It was more focused and more pressing than Matthews had ever observed during their time together. His father had consistently stated that the distinction between a proficient handler and an exceptional one lay in understanding when to defer to the dog's instincts rather than adhering strictly to procedure. Matthews observed Courage's insistent efforts to convey a message, their eyes connecting briefly in the mirror. In that instant, he recognized that this wasn't a matter of flawed training or unpredictable animal behavior. This was Courage attempting to avert a loss of life. Matthew's hand instinctively moved to the brake pedal even before his mind fully registered the action. He forcefully pressed down, causing the tires to screech against the damp asphalt as the SUV abruptly stopped. Through the windshield, he observed the gap between his vehicle and the transport van widening. All units, tail position has stopped. Repeat, tail position has stopped. The Vanguard's voice sounded urgently over the radio. Matthews reached for the radio. Halt. Convoy. A disturbance is alerting personnel to the transport van. Something's amiss. Ahead, brake lights appeared as the transport van and lead vehicle reacted to the disruption, moving onto the shoulder with more control than Matthews had achieved. His heart pounded in his chest as dust and road debris settled around his now stopped vehicle. The radio blared with Lieutenant Davidson's anger. Matthews, what in the world do you think you're doing? Return to your position immediately. Sir, I request an immediate inspection of the transport van. My K-9 is alerting to something specific. You've stopped a high-security convoy on an open highway because your dog is barking? Davidson's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. Resume position now. Through the settling dust cloud, Matthews saw the lieutenant's car door fling open. Davidson emerged, face flushed crimson even from this distance, striding back toward Matthews' vehicle with the determined gait of someone about to end a career. Courage kept barking, remaining fixated on the transport van. Matthews got out of his vehicle, holding his position as Davidson drew near. The lieutenant's eyes were tight with contained anger, his hand deliberately positioned on his service weapon. Sir Matthews, Davidson's voice was sharp and precise. You have precisely 5 seconds to clarify why you've jeopardized this entire operation before I arrest you for insubordination. Matthews straightened his spine, striving to keep his voice even. Sir, Courage is trained to identify threats. He's alerting specifically to that transport van in a manner I've never observed before. Davidson's sarcasm sliced through the morning air. You've been a K-9 handler for, 12 weeks? And suddenly you're the authority on K-9 behavior? My father mentored me throughout my life, sir, Matthews replied, surprised by the firmness in his tone, and he always maintained that when a dog like Courage exhibits behavior like this, it indicates a serious issue. Your father is deceased, Officer Davidson stated firmly, and your career is poised to follow suit if you do not return to that vehicle. The harsh words impacted Matthews with the force of a physical assault, but instead of yielding, his determination solidified. Sir, what potential danger exists in conducting a preliminary investigation? Should I be incorrect, I will submit my resignation immediately. Oh, you'll be doing that regardless, Davidson retorted. From the transport van, a guard called out, Lieutenant, what's the situation? Davidson turned away from Matthews, shouting back, "Nothing. Just an inexperienced handler who can't control his animal." Matthews seized the lieutenant's brief lapse in attention to open his rear door. Immediately, Courage dashed toward the transport van, his barking intensifying. "Courage, heel," Matthews called, but the dog was focused on the task, positioning himself directly in front of the transport van's rear doors, his body tense and watchful. Several other officers had now left their vehicles, observing the situation with reactions varying from embarrassment to curiosity. The transport guards stood nervously by the van, hands on their weapons, unsure of what to do. "Get that dog away from my transport," Davidson ordered, moving toward Matthews again. "You've just thrown away your career. Do you understand that?" Matthews swallowed, keenly aware of the professional destruction he was causing. Still, something beyond reason pushed him forward. His confidence stemmed from a sense of unwavering belief, reflecting his father's guidance and a deepening suspicion that a serious problem existed. "Sir," he stated softly, "I suspect there's an immediate danger to this transport. If I am mistaken, I will bear any repercussions. Please inspect the van." Davidson observed him intently, his jaw clenching with restrained anger. At last, he addressed the transport guards. "Very well. Examine it. Let's definitively demonstrate what occurs when familial connections secure a job beyond one's qualifications." The transport guards exchanged hesitant looks as Lieutenant Davidson arrived. "Sir, this is a violation of protocol. We are not authorized to open the transport doors outside a designated secure facility," Officer Jenkins stated. "I am familiar with the protocol, Officer Jenkins. I contributed to drafting half of it," Davidson retorted. He added, "But it seems we must accommodate Officer Matthews' special assignment before we can proceed with our regular duties." Despite the remark, Matthews maintained a composed expression, his attention drawn to Courage, who stood directly before the van's rear doors. The dog's focus was intense, his ears pricked forward, his body trembling with anticipation. Officer Jenkins used his key to unlock the exterior door, while Officer Reyes drew his firearm and prepared himself. "Move away from the doors, prisoners. Keep your hands in sight." The substantial metal door opened with a hydraulic hiss. The interior was dimly lit, showing 2 rows of prisoners fastened to their seats with handcuffs and ankle restraints, each additionally secured to the floor with chains. This was the usual method for prisoner transport, intended to severely limit movement. "Count off," Jenkins commanded, standing at the entrance. Lieutenant Davidson stepped forward. "I'll manage this." He entered the van, his expression serious. "Let's proceed swiftly." Matthews stayed outside, displaying bravery. His barking had stopped abruptly, and he was now intently focused. The dog's gaze followed something within the van, his posture changing from alertness to a targeting stance, the way he positioned himself when concentrating on a particular danger. Inside, Davidson started the prisoner count, proceeding carefully down the central aisle. "1. Here," answered the first prisoner, a man with extensive tattoos who raised his handcuffed hands. 2. A fellow inmate responded with a gesture, lifting his hands. The head count proceeded smoothly until Davidson arrived at the 6th prisoner, positioned toward the back of the van where darkness prevailed. The light fixture above had failed, making that section notably dark. 6. Davidson announced. "Here and accounted for," came a steady reply from the shadows. The prisoner moved a little, the restraints on his ankles rattling against the metallic floor. Matthews observed a sudden shift in Courage's demeanor. The dog's muscles tightened, a low growl substituting for his previous barks. Something about that particular prisoner had elicited a more pronounced reaction. "Sir," Matthews called out with a sense of urgency, "Courage is signaling prisoner 6. Davidson turned, releasing an exasperated sigh. "Officer Matthews, I swear to—" His words were interrupted as his gaze fell upon something unexpected. The lieutenant moved closer, inspecting the restraints on prisoner 6. Davidson stated, his voice suddenly professional, "Your cuffs are loose." "How did that happen, inmate?" The prisoner, a muscular man with close-cropped hair and cold, calculating eyes, smiled slowly. "Just got lucky, I guess." Matthews witnessed the event unfold in slow motion. As Davidson reached for his radio to report the security breach, the prisoner's posture shifted with snake-like speed. His seemingly stable hands lunged forward, one seizing Davidson's firearm, while the other encircled the lieutenant's neck. "Remain still," the prisoner yelled, pulling Davidson rearward within the restricted space of the transport van. "Retreat from the doorway, or the lieutenant will be harmed." The remaining prisoners commenced shouting, a few expressing approval, others reacting with shock. Officers Jenkins and Reyes quickly drew their weapons, but the confined space and Davidson's position as a human shield prevented any shots. "Donner, stand down," Jenkins yelled, identifying the prisoner. Matthews's training engaged instantly. He created space, drawing people away from the van doors, while evaluating the swiftly worsening situation. He frantically tried to remember everything about Prisoner 6, Ray Donner, a former military member serving multiple life sentences for armed robbery and murder. Donner was a 3-time escape artist who had previously killed 2 guards during a transport. "I want every officer to back up 20 feet from this van," Donner announced, pressing the barrel of Davidson's service weapon against the lieutenant's temple. "Do it now, or watch your boss die on dashcam." The other officers started to fall back steadily, their weapons still raised. Matthews moved alongside them, clinging to his resolve, his thoughts quickly analyzing possible strategies, Davidson's gaze meeting Matthews. For a fleeting moment, visible through the van door, devoid of anger now, but with the sharp focus of an experienced officer facing a difficult situation, a subtle nod passed between them, a professional recognition superseding their previous disagreement. The highway had become a tactical nightmare rather than a typical transport route. Officers sought cover behind vehicles while keeping their weapons trained on the transport van. Inside, Ray Donner had positioned Lieutenant Davidson in the van's open doorway, utilizing him as both a shield and a bargaining chip. "Here's how this works," Donner announced, his voice projecting the calm confidence of someone who had anticipated the situation. "I want the keys to the lead car." A straightforward escape was achieved, and there was no sign of pursuit for 30 minutes. Officer Jenkins had assumed tactical command, directing the response team's positions through quiet radio communications. "Dispatch, we have a code 10-24, a hostage situation involving Lieutenant Davidson, requesting immediate backup and tactical team deployment to Highway 16, mile marker 37. Matthews held onto his resolve, one hand securely on his harness as they took cover behind his patrol SUV. The dog had become unusually quiet, his posture watchful yet composed, shifting from an alert to an operational stance. Together they observed Donner's actions, assessing the unfolding circumstances. "You," Donner called, looking directly at Matthews. "Canine officer, approach where I can see you by yourself." Matthews briefly looked at Jenkins, who gave a hesitant nod. Matthews moved deliberately, stepping into the open and stopping 15 feet from the van. "That's far enough," Donner stated. "Did your dog detect a problem?" "A very perceptive animal." Matthews responded calmly, acknowledging his dog's intelligence. He observed the hostage situation with a trained perspective. Davidson was awake, his face composed despite the gun against his head. "Officer Matthews, you and your dog have made an unexpected intervention in what should have been a flawless escape," Donner stated, evaluating the situation with precision. "My associates are positioned at the county line, expecting my arrival." The situation would have been resolved successfully if the convoy hadn't been halted. "Are there collaborators present?" Matthews inquired, understanding that Donner was deliberately disclosing details. "A non-existent highway maintenance crew," Donner affirmed with a subtle smile. "They are likely anticipating the delay." A message from dispatch came through the radio. "All units, backup is 12 minutes away. Tactical team ETA 17 minutes. Donner chuckled. "It's too late." "Officer Matthews, given that your dog prompted this slight deviation, you will assist me. Please retrieve those keys and bring them here, doing so calmly." Matthews acknowledged, turning towards the lead vehicle where the keys were located. As he did so, he noticed someone displaying bravery positioned near his SUV, mostly concealed from Donner's line of sight. A plan started to develop. "The rest of you," Donner addressed the other officers, "lower your weapons and move them away. I am familiar with police procedure." The safety of the lieutenant is paramount, isn't it? He increased his hold on Davidson, prompting the lieutenant to show discomfort. The transport guards, with evident hesitation, lowered their weapons. Matthews returned with the keys, pausing at the prescribed distance. "Toss them here," Donner instructed. Matthews followed the order, throwing the keys so they landed just beyond the van's step. Donner would need to advance a little to get them, a deliberately planned placement. "Now, where's that dog of yours?" Donner inquired, his gaze sweeping the surroundings. "I ensured he was safely in my vehicle," Matthews stated with practiced ease. "He is trained to engage armed suspects. It would be unfortunate if he misunderstood the circumstances." A sound decision, Donner acknowledged favorably. Introducing a canine would create difficulties. Matthews kept his eyes fixed on Donner, avoiding looking in the direction of where the true source of resolve was situated. "What will happen to the lieutenant after you have the car?" "That is contingent upon the success of the next several minutes," Donner responded. "I have no desire to cause harm, but I will not return to a cell. 18 years inside is sufficient." Matthews, during the conversation, was quietly evaluating the situation. The lieutenant's location, Donner's hold on the weapon, the distance involved, were all elements in the quickly developing strategy. Above all, he observed that Donner's focus was split between the officers, the keys remaining just out of reach, and his plans for what came next. "You served in the military," Matthews noted, keeping the conversation flowing with Donner while making small adjustments to his own stance. "Special Forces, correct?" Donner replied, a trace of satisfaction in his tone. "2 tours with Army Rangers before I discovered more lucrative opportunities, which is why I understand precisely what you're all thinking. The tactical approaches, the response times, the protocol. I'm very familiar with them." Davidson's gaze briefly connected with Matthews. The lieutenant recognized the delaying maneuver. Even with their previous disagreement, a brief instance of professional respect emerged. "I need water," Davidson said abruptly, his voice hoarse. "I can't breathe properly with my arm around my throat." "Sir, we have water available here," Matthews responded, indicating his patrol vehicle. "It would demonstrate goodwill to address basic humanitarian requirements." "All right," Donner conceded after a pause. "Bring it carefully." Matthews proceeded purposefully toward his vehicle, utilizing the movement to evaluate visibility and complete his strategy. Upon returning with the water bottle, he established himself at the exact angle required, a position that would necessitate Donner to shift somewhat away from the location where Courage was concealed, allowing him to simultaneously safeguard his hostage and keep Matthews within his line of sight. "Here," Matthews stated, setting the bottle down close to the keys. The placement was intentional. When the moment arrived, Donner had to glance downwards to retrieve both items, briefly diverting his focus. "Pathetic attempts at manipulation," Donner remarked, shaking his head. "This is why most cops fail in hostage situations. You're all following procedure." Matthews responded, deliberately adjusting his posture to project confidence. "Does your manual address the situation when you can't see the canine?" A flicker of doubt crossed Donner's face for the first time. His gaze quickly scanned the surroundings, looking for the dog he's been informed was safely inside the vehicle. "What are you talking about?" Matthews stated calmly, his hand moving to the designated position for a rapid attack. "He was never there." Donner's expression changed from assurance to worry, as he understood the trap forming around him. His eyes frantically searched the area, looking for the dog he had considered unimportant. "You're bluffing," he stated, firmly holding Davidson while shifting his posture to check under the cars. The dog had disappeared. "I should have noticed." "The keys," Donner said abruptly, indicating the ground with the gun. "Retrieve them and give them to me." "Immediately," Matthews responded, advancing cautiously as if agreeing. While leaning down to pick up the keys, Matthews made a choice. His right hand dropped to his side, fingers snapping once, a crisp, nearly silent sound that would be meaningless to human ears, but conveyed a specific meaning to his partner. From beneath the transport van, Courage appeared like a phantom. There was no barking, no warning growl, just 70 pounds of precision-trained muscle moving silently. In the fraction of a second before impact, Donner finally noticed the movement in his peripheral vision. But it was already too late. Courage made contact with precise accuracy, his jaws securing Donner's gun arm with sufficient force to compress but avoiding crushing, a specialized bite intended to neutralize without causing lasting harm. The prisoner reacted with a cry of shock and discomfort as the German Shepherd's force lifted his arm, and the weapon fired harmlessly into the air. Lieutenant Davidson responded immediately, driving his elbow back into Donner's solar plexus while shifting his weight forward, breaking the hold around his neck. The lieutenant rolled free as Matthews covered the distance in 3 quick steps. Donner fought fiercely against Courage's hold, but the dog held firm, maintaining consistent pressure that immobilized the arm without damaging arteries or bones. The gun fell to the pavement as Matthews landed a precise strike to Donner's shoulder, which further destabilized his balance. With Donner face down, his other arm secured behind his back, Matthews calmly and slowly gave instructions. Upon Donner's compliance, Matthews issued the release command, "Courage, out." The German Shepherd immediately loosened his hold, retreating 3 steps while remaining focused on the prisoner, prepared to reactivate his restraint if needed. Matthews moved quickly, fastening reinforced restraints around Donner's wrists, with 2 other officers providing protection. "Secure," Matthews declared once the cuffs were double-locked. The team proceeded with coordinated precision, fully restraining Donner with additional restraints while addressing his injured arm. Blood marked his sleeve where Courage's teeth had broken the skin, but the wound was stabilized, precisely as the dog had been trained to act. Lieutenant Davidson came forward, feeling the pressure where Donner's arm had squeezed his neck. He paused to watch the prisoner being restrained, then looked at Matthews with an expression the younger officer found difficult to interpret. "Search him completely," Davidson instructed the team. "He likely has tools to break free from the initial bonds. Ensure there are no other hidden items." Officer Jenkins carried out the search, finally discovering a small metal tool inside Donner's boot. "Found it," he announced. The object appeared to be a modified lockpick, Davidson noted. He suggested checking the other prisoners, as this could have been a coordinated effort. As the team secured the area, Matthews examined Courage for any injuries resulting from the apprehension. The German Shepherd remained calm, his task finished, anticipating the next order with unwavering concentration. "Good boy," Matthews murmured, briefly connecting with his partner. The operation was flawlessly executed. Courage offered a short tail wag, the sole deviation from his composed bearing. Davidson came forward, his previous frustration now something Matthews couldn't readily define. "Your dog performed well," the lieutenant stated directly. "Clean takedown." "Thank you, sir," Matthews responded, rising to address his superior. "Dispatch reports they've apprehended 2 suspects in a fraudulent maintenance vehicle at the county line," Davidson added. As it turned out, Donner's associates were positioned precisely as he indicated. Davidson observed the unfolding events and remarked that, without the dog's timely warning, the situation could have transpired quite differently. Donner would have connected with his associates, and the consequences remained unstated. The convoy continued its journey 40 minutes later, bolstered by extra security vehicles and a tactical team escort. Inside the lead car, Lieutenant Davidson insisted Matthews and Courage ride with him, assigning another officer to drive Matthews's vehicle. For the initial miles, the 3 journeyed in silence, the morning's occurrences weighing on them. "You jeopardized your career today," Davidson finally stated, his gaze fixed on the road ahead, halting the convoy and defying a superior officer, potentially creating a security breach, all predicated on your dog's actions. Matthews braced himself, anticipating the disciplinary lecture. "Yes, sir," he stated. "In 22 years with this department, I've observed officers making decisions based on hunches, evidence, and experience, but never exclusively due to a canine's unexplainable alert." Davidson briefly looked in the rearview mirror, observing Courage, who remained alert in the back seat. Most handlers would have disregarded their dog's actions, particularly with a superior officer requesting it. Matthews replied that his father always said questioning a dog's instincts in a critical moment could be the difference between life and death. "I couldn't ignore what Courage was telling me," he added. Davidson nodded slowly. "Your father was one of the most stubborn men I ever worked with. He drove me crazy with his unorthodox training methods and constant challenges to standard protocol. A hint of something like respect softened his voice, but his canines had the highest success rate in the state. I never understood how. Matthews explained that he believed in building true partnerships, not just handler-dog relationships. He said most departments train dogs to be tools, but they should be trained as thinking team members. Today proved his point, Davidson conceded, rubbing his neck where Donner's arm had compressed his throat. If you and Courage hadn't been there, this transport would have unfolded very differently. People would have died, myself included, most likely. A week had passed, and Matthews stood at attention within the department's briefing room. The chief of police moved to the front, speaking to the gathered officers. Today, we acknowledge outstanding service that averted a potential tragedy. The chief began. Lieutenant Davidson has submitted a detailed report recommending commendation for Officer Matthews and his canine partner Courage. Their actions directly prevented a coordinated escape attempt and potentially saved multiple lives. Lieutenant Davidson approached, holding a department commendation pin. This gesture carried special significance, especially considering that he had been ready to end Matthews' career just days earlier. Davidson formally stated that Matthews' quick thinking and willingness to trust his partner's instincts exemplified the department's highest standards, attaching the pin to Matthews' uniform, even when it required challenging a superior officer who was incorrect. The final words were spoken softly, intended solely for Matthews to hear. Following the ceremony's conclusion, Matthews drove to the hilltop cemetery where his father was buried. A sense of bravery stood with him, waiting as Matthews knelt near the plain headstone. "You were correct, Dad," he said softly, attaching the commendation pin to the chilly granite, regarding the importance of trusting one's colleague rather than procedure, about Courage being unique, about everything. Courage shifted nearer, pressing his head against Matthews' arm, seemingly grasping the weight of the occasion. Lieutenant Davidson conveyed that you remain a source of frustration, even in passing, Matthews remarked with a slight smile, but he also acknowledged that your training approaches were correct. He plans to institute them across the department next month. As the setting sun stretched long shadows over the cemetery, Matthews prepared to depart. He experienced a feeling of fulfillment, of obligations fulfilled and teachings respected. His father's legacy would persist through the special connection he shared with Courage, a partnership founded on shared trust that had already demonstrated its value in the most challenging situations. "Come on, boy," Matthews said, his voice calm and assured as they returned to the patrol car together. "We have work to do." Have you ever observed an animal anticipating danger before humans could perceive it? Creatures demonstrate remarkable instincts, frequently exceeding our own capabilities, enabling them to detect dangers we could overlook. Considering Officer Matthews' situation, what course of action would you have taken? Should you have followed your dog's instincts, despite potential career repercussions? Would you prioritize your pet's behavior above reason and established protocols? Please share your related experiences in the comments section. We hope today's story resonated with you. Please subscribe and enable notifications to stay updated on our daily uploads of remarkable dog stories. These four-legged heroes deserve acknowledgement for the amazing work they perform with their human partners. Share this video with the dog enthusiasts in your life who appreciate that animals sometimes possess greater understanding than humans do. You're currently watching our previous stories about amazing canine heroes, including our well-known video about the search dog who located a missing child in a blizzard when all human efforts had failed. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video.